Meeting of the Agency for Operations Committee. I would like to remind everyone that this meeting is being broadcast via internet. The first action item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the July 25, 2012 meeting. Are there any questions or corrections? Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Motion approved. For the agenda item 3, I would like to call on Dr. Alonso to introduce the topic for the meeting's report. He will provide us with some background information and introduce other presenters. Dr. Alonso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For today's Deputy Commissioner's report, we have two reports that come under that. I will actually present the first report, which is the agency's financials, and respond to any questions that you may have. I will then introduce our staff to give you an update on our continuous improvement initiative. The financial report was sent to you, I guess, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, but we also have provided a hard copy here at your desk, at your place, in case you have not, you didn't bring yours. We provide another one. This financial report is for the period ending August 31st, 2012. Though we call this quarterly reports, we actually try to align it with the fiscal year. We thought that that would be much more meaningful at this time than to give you one for just September of the new fiscal year. So actually, the quarterly report is for the year ending August 31st, 2012. I'm not going to cover, Mr. Chairman and members, all 17 pages in detail, but instead I would like to focus on a couple of highlights. Of course, if you have any questions on any specific item in the report, we will be glad to respond to that or to provide additional information. The first point that I would like to cover with you is that for both the operating budget, which starts on page 3 of your report, 3 of 17, and for the trusteed budget, the trusteed funds budget, which is on page 11. I know I'm skipping and I'm directing your attention to two distinct pages, but the point applies to both of them. The ending balances that you see on the right-hand column for both of those budgets represent the year-end balances. That takes into account all expenditures and encumbrances that we made prior to closing the books for the fiscal year. However, I want to point out that those balances do not include any transfers that we make out of there at the end of the year that we have authority to transfer. Rider language allows us to transfer up to 20% of any strategy in or out without any legislative approval. And so we are to that point, we are in the process, staff is in the process of analyzing those balances that you have before you and making any transfers necessarily. Primarily, we transfer to two, and I think I reported this before, to two areas. First, we transfer any unobligated general revenue to those strategies that were partially funded with loan funds for administrative purposes. This allows us to release loan funds that were previously budgeted for administration back into the program to make more loans, and I'll have a couple of points on that later on when I talk about the loan program. Secondly, we transfer unobligated general revenue to Texas grants. That's been the practice. That's we feel is probably the best investment, again, because it benefits the students directly and it goes back to issuing more Texas grants to the students. Again, we have to keep within the 20% authority that we have by rider. On page 5 of the report and continuing through page 10, we list the budget adjustments for the year. Unless you have a question on any of those adjustments, I'm not going to go through every one of them because those are quite lengthy. But I would just like to point out that all budget adjustments that are made throughout the year are made through a very transparent and open process. And I say that with quite a bit of pride because that's important to us. Any adjustment for to our budget, whether it's increase, decrease, transferring of funds, new funds, closing out, whatever. We send the amendments through an approval process that includes a review and signature of the appropriate assistant commissioner, one or both deputy commissioners as appropriate. In all cases, it has my signature, and then through to the commissioner. And I believe it actually goes through the associate commissioner first before it gets to the commissioner. And believe me, the commissioner or the associate commissioner asks questions. So we got to make sure that we have a good explanation. And this process assures that we have full transparency, and it allows anybody in the organization, from whoever initiates it up to the commissioner who gives the final approval, to ask questions and to be able to know what is going on. And so, and then in the spirit of full transparency, we'll list them for you, not only on this report, but on every quarterly report that we bring to you. On page 13, which is a listing of our federal contracts, those are listed by contract period, not necessarily by fiscal year. Those do not align to the fiscal year because federal contracts start and end at different times throughout the fiscal year. So we list this one's here by contract year. Let me just remind you, because this always tends to be a source of confusion, that the balances that you see on the right-hand column are actual cash balances, not a report of over expenditures or under expenditure. It is cash that we draw down from the feds. And so if you see, and I know at one meeting Dr. Teacher inquired about this, if you see a negative balance on there, that means that we have spent the money, we've reported it on our books, recorded it on our books, but we have not drawn down the cash from the feds. And since we are on a cash reimbursement, we can't draw down money that we haven't spent. So actually, this is one time where I will tell you it's a good thing to have a negative balance because it actually works in our favor. And of course, at the end of the year, as you can see on some of those, we've closed out and it zeroes out because we obviously get the cash that we have spent. So that's what that report indicates. Finally, on page 16 and 17, you have a snapshot of our loan funds and our debt summary. I'm pleased to report that we have completed the year in good fiscal condition, meeting all our debt requirements, which is always a good thing, and this board has always done that. And we continue to provide low-interest loans to the students, which is the purpose of this program. We had initially, if you recall, at the retreat, there was a discussion about making a report on our loan collections. And at the chairman's request, it went over into the parking lot, as he called it. And we were going to bring this report to the board or to the AOC today. But because the people at the Office of the Attorney General's office who are responsible for this were not available this week, I think they're both out of town. I mean, there's more than two working on it, but the two that would come up here to answer questions are both out of town. With the concurrence of Chairman Lalani, we are postponing this till the January board meeting, so that you can, so that you can actually ask questions of the people. I mean, it's a contract that it's a good contract that we executed about 2.5 years ago. It has proven given us very good results, and I think that you will be glad to hear from them what they're doing and how they're doing it, and so that you can question them on that. Let me just say that as far as the loan program is concerned, and just a couple of highlights, our aggregate loan portfolio is now, at the end of FY12, a little bit over $1 billion. Which is an increase of almost 5% from the year before. Our repayments are up by about 10.7%. Again, another good thing. Our cash transfers from interest and sinking to the loans, which is by law and according to the bond covenants, we have to set aside money for next fiscal year's principal and interest payment. But any excess funds that we collect there can go to either make additional loans or to cover operating costs. And so I'm glad and I'm pleased to report that the amount that we transfer from the interest and sinking fund back into the loan fund, primarily to make more loans, is increased by 142% from the year before. So we will be transferring approximately $14.5 million. Again, that speaks to the quality of quality oversight that our staff has over this loan program. Very conservatively managed, well managed, and it is doing what it's supposed to do.
How much is that is attributable to the interest?
I don't know if we have figures. I would suppose that a large portion of it is Jim, because we're getting very good interest rates. So those are just a few highlights on the loan program. Like I said, next meeting we will have somebody here from the Attorney General's office, and I look forward to for you to be able to question them on our collections, because again, we had a very good year. Let me just say, and I don't have the details, but let me just say that since we transfer the contract, we enter into the contract with the Attorney General's office to do our collections, every year they have broken the record of collections. Last year was another record-breaking year, and I believe it was over $7 million that they collected. I can't remember the exact amount, but we'll get those details. But again, I am pleased to report that it is working well. So, Mr. Chairman, members, that is a quick overview of the financial report. I know I went over it rather quickly, but I'll be pleased to answer questions, or if I can't, I will be pleased to call on staff to do so.
Thank you, Dr. Alonso. Any further questions? Not? Thank you, sir. And you're going to make the comments on continuous improvement?
I will do it. I will do that, sir. The second report that we have under the Deputy Commissioner's report is the update on our continuous improvement initiative. For this part, for this report, I will call on Elaine Lang, who is the Director of Continuous Improvement here at the agency, and she will provide the committee an update on that initiative. She will introduce her co-presenter. But before I call on Elaine, though, before I turn it over to Elaine, though, I would like to make a couple of quick comments. First of all, let me tell the committee, I'd like to tell the committee that our initiative on continuous improvement is something that I'm really very excited about. And I got to tell you, you may not know this, but staff knows this, that I'm normally a person that doesn't get very excited about a lot of things. But this initiative has me really, and I'm talking about genuinely excited, and it's something that I'm passionate about. I'm really looking forward to good results from this initiative. I believe strongly that we are embarking on the correct journey, and that this is absolutely the right thing that we can do at this time, and that will yield very good results. Secondly, I want to express my appreciation to everyone in the agency that has provided feedback and affirmation on our efforts as we brief them, as we tell them what this is all about. I can't tell you how much the words of encouragement and support and how meaningful they are to us. I am very grateful for the support, and I just regret that he's out of the room, because Chairman Heldenfels has been a great supporter and advocate for continuous improvement for us. And, of course, Commissioner Paredes has provided the utmost support and backing to us on this. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call on Elaine Lang to give us a short, brief report on continuous improvement. Elaine?
Dr. Lang.
Thank you, Dr. Alonso. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and the rest of the committee. Just a quick update. When I was last here in July, you asked me to come back in October and tell you about the 3 lean events that we'll be doing this year, and particularly measures and targets. So the first slide just tells you where were we back in July. I was in the beginning of getting to know everybody within the agency, both in the academic planning and policy side, as well as business, finance, and administration. was a delight. Everyone made themselves incredibly available to talk to me about what they do and how they do it. I also had a chance to visit with the Texas Workforce Commission and learn about their initiative under SB 563, and that reports out on the Texas Workforce Commission website. But they did a rapid process improvement for work opportunity tax credit for employers, and learned from them as well. I synthesized all that information in one 5-page summary which said, what are the main services that the coordinating board provides, and what is their relative importance to the agency? What are the key influences upon the agency, and what are our strategic advantages and challenges? And all of that set the tone for me to begin having some long-term conversations with folks about these lean events. I want to also echo what Dr. Alonso said. We would not be here today if it was not for the openness, enthusiasm, and may I say daring, of the folks within the agency, because this is a new way of thinking about our work. So the 3 lean events, first of all, they are taking place October, November, and December. And you might wonder, why did I do in such a compressed schedule? And there's really 2 reasons. One is the legislature goes into session in January, and people will be extremely busy. That's a key process within the agency, and I did not want people to feel torn between investing in lean and then investing in the work with the legislature. The second thing is with lean events, it's often helpful to have some momentum. And having 3 events that we do, one right on top of another, creates a good kind of energy within the agency and a synergy. So I'd like to thank, the first sponsor is Carrie Whitfield from Human Resources. Very briefly, any employee who leaves the agency has what we call a terminated personnel file. Those have to be retained for 75 years, so there's no way to discard them. And often they are asked to be used when employers call and ask for verification of employment. And it could be an employee who is here 10 years ago. So that is an area where we can gain some efficiencies, because it is taking time for staff, and it's a regulated function. So you can see that in each case I've given you the measure and the target and the dates. We also wanted to tackle something in the Commissioner's office. Again, we often get queries about something that happened at the coordinating board, let's say in 1998, related to UTSA or UT Pan Am. And that's a manual process where someone has to go through the files and find that information and then report back to our constituent who asked for it. Again, a time-consuming process. And then the last area is in the loan repayment program. And many of the applications that come in are handwritten, and that data has to be manually entered into our system. So each of these folks, each of these sponsors have been very enthusiastic, very committed to the lean process, and have made their staff available, and their staff have been very enthusiastic as well. So let me tell you what's going to happen in these lean events. Normally a lean event takes place over 3 days, where you take staff from the area that are involved, as well as a couple of other folks from outside, and work anywhere from 3 to 5 days. We've chosen a 2-day format because these lean events take place within departments. They are, in some sense, a smaller scope than if something that would take place across many parts of the agency. And it has the traditional aspects that you would see within a lean event, starting with a kickoff and ending with what we call a celebration, which is a chance for us to recognize the team for the work that they did in those 16 hours, which really transforms a process from what it was to what it will be in the future. The other important thing is that this lean format also allowed staff to learn by doing. So they'll learn about process mapping, measuring, and analyzing while they're actually doing the work. So having outlined these 3 events and the format for the days, I'd like to tell you why what was critical for the selection for these events, because we did have many ways we could have gone. The first thing is the customer requirements, which is a key part of a lean event, were very clearly able to be defined. Our customers needed information timely and in an accurate manner. Each of these processes are manual right now. They are low variation. They lend themselves to staff professional development from all parts of the agency. And most importantly, in my dialogue across these last few months, I learned that they will build upon some work that has been done in the loan program operations. Over the last year, they have deployed what we call electronic content management. And this is not my twin sister, but this is my colleague Debbie Whitus here to the right of me. And I asked her to come and tell you what that team accomplished over the last year. And so I'm going to turn it over for Debbie for her to tell you about this.
Thank you, Elaine. Good afternoon. I just want to take a few minutes and provide you with a very high-level overview and high-level summary of an improvement projects to the systems within LPO that have been implemented since February of this year. The goal of the project was to implement an enterprise content management system that provided agile business process management, comprehensive records management, and a system that can handle very high volume document-centric processes, with the overall biggest goal was to decrease LPO operational expenses as much as we could in this day. LPO was operating on a very antiquated, obsolete legacy system, so moving to this system allowed for some real improvement to take place. Within LPO, there are 7 functional areas, from customer service all the way to the processing aspect of it. We looked at all 7 of those areas, and we also looked at the collection arm of the State Attorney General's office because those 2 areas interact so much. To begin the process, we looked at all of the functional processes within LPO. We mapped the as-is process. We analyzed those. We looked for gaps. We looked for efficiency opportunities within the system itself. And then we created the desired state maps, and then those were turned into actual workflows within the enterprise content management system. This next slide shows you a quick visual on what the system process looked like prior to the improvement project. As you can see, we've got many different areas that processes and systems were touched during just one payment process. And the next slide will show you what it looks like today after the improvement project took place. And we did that for every one of the functional areas within LPO. And so in summary, the systematic enhancements that we were able to make within LPO that were implemented in February were a reduction of document types by 33%, a 30% reduction in the number of workflows, a 100% reduction in the number of cover sheets, which as a side note also reduces the amount of time it takes a document to get from the imaging process onto the document processing floor. And then we also reduced by 100% the after-hour barcode servicing and event pushing services that took place to get documents out to the floor. So from 2009 to 2012, we've been able to provide some very good improvements within LPO. As a quick overview, the due diligence documents are documents that strictly go to archive. And due to the barcode processes and event processes that ran sometimes overnight and then sometimes got caught up within system downtimes, we've seen a great reduction from up to 96 hours to about an hour. And then another area of note would be the application import process. That generally took about 4 hours, which was completely manual, and today it takes 0 time because it's completely automated. When the batch process occurs, the enterprise content management reaches out and picks the information up and moves it so it's available to the staff when they come in the next day. And then some of the other areas that are highlighted with the improvement project, the FTEs in LPO since 2009 have been reduced by 17%, and those reductions are comprised of positions that were vacant as well as positions that were vacated between 2000 and 2012 that we didn't need that extra manpower. The temp services during peak processing seasons that occur twice during the year have been reduced by 75%. We've reduced the employee downtime, the system downtime, by 98%. And a few other highlights, the origination backlog from 2009 to 12, again, moving from manual processes to electronic processes. We're processing in real time now, so we've reduced any backlogs by 100% there. The payment processing system processing times we've reduced by 57%. The archive system processing times reduced by 63%. And the income fax routing process are reduced by 66% because now that is again handled electronically. The images are moved from the one enterprise system to the other. And then again, our daily import times by 100%. And this is, the LPO does a very, very good job of having very good measures in place so we can really calculate the efficiencies that we've gained by implementing the enterprise content management system.
So you can see that the results that loan program operations was able to achieve with this process improvement allows us to build upon it with the 3 lean events we'll be doing. And most importantly, we're excited about bringing you back our results in January on the lean events that we conduct over the next 3 months. And we're open to any questions or comments you might have for us.
Well, I find this very impressive. It sure is. I hope you continue on this well. Dr. Alonso, let me ask you, have you been able to quantify the actual cost reduction as a result of some of these efficiencies yet?
We have not, Mr. Chairman. We are in the pre-work stage on capturing what is the actual staff time that is being used for each of these processes. So that's something we will be bringing back to you in January.
Okay.
We ask for your patience.
Great. That's great.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and this report here, those stats that Debbie and Elaine just shared with you, that's the kind of stuff that gets me excited, because this is not just feel-good stuff. This is not just eye candy or whatever you want to call it. These are tangible, measurable results that will yield a higher efficiency in this agency.
Can we move the team over to my office down the road when you get finished doing this here? I think I could
Thank you.
get a lot of benefit too.
So we all could.
The problematic part was the beginning chart. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, the real busy?
Yeah, the busy.
Yeah,
Before.
yeah, and
Prior to.
we talked about that, I mean, that's just a real busy chart, but we wanted to show the impact, of what we reduce it from. If we'd have found a way to put those 2 charts side by side, I think that would have really been impactful, but you wouldn't have been able to see anything. But, I think you get the point, which is we were able to reduce those processes tremendously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Alonso. I don't think these items require any committee action, so we're going to move on next to the agenda item 4A, is consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee relating to the new Chapter 1, Subchapter E, Section 1.110-1.120 of the Board Rules concerning student complaint procedures. I'll ask General Counsel Bill Franz to present this to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Milani. Board members, you have the packet in front of you. Let me give you a high-level view. The United States Department of Education has mandated that every state implement what we're referring to as student complaint procedures, and that's what the department calls them as well. And the reason for doing so is to make certain that each state's institutions that are authorized by either the legislature or by the appropriate agency in the state, in this case the coordinating board, have a procedure in place so that any current, prospective, or former student can complain about the impact, the education impact that he or she is receiving at that school, and virtually complain about any topic he or she desires. The goal of this is to have a system that is as streamlined as we can make it, so that complaints can be resolved at the earliest possible step. Excuse me. And hopefully that would be at the institutional level. But as you've seen by going through this, packet of information and the proposed rules, the complaint can be escalated ultimately to the coordinating board. As you've also noticed, there are a number of complaints that we will not handle. We won't handle anonymous complaints, for example. We're not going to handle a complaint of a student who says, I should have had an A and I got a B+. We view that as strictly within the purview of the student and the institution, and in that matter, more than likely the immediate faculty member and at most the dean. And every institution in the state has a process in place to deal with those kind of complaints. So if an institution is part of a system, these rules propose that we send the complaint to the system for handling. That comports with the United States Department of Education's guidance to all states on this matter. If an institution is a standalone institution, such as Midwestern States, Stephen F. Austin, et cetera, we will deal with that institution, allow that institution to go through its entire complaint procedure that would be pertinent to the particular complaint filed. And if the student at the end of that procedure was not satisfied, he or she could come to the coordinating board, file the complaint, and we will review it, investigate as necessary, and make a recommendation ultimately to the commissioner. As you'll see in sections 1.1118 through 1.1120, the staff would make the recommendation to the commissioner to either dismiss the complaint or to recommend to the commissioner that the institution be mandated to take certain action. It is up to the commissioner at that point to decide whether to dismiss or to direct the educational institution to take certain action. And for complaints involving institutional integrity, and for that we had the Penn State situation, the University of Virginia situation particularly in mind, the commissioner can forward those complaints to the full board for its decision. In cases that don't involve institutional integrity, these rules propose that the commissioner be allowed to make the final decision. If there are any questions, I'd be pleased to answer.
Before we get to that, you all have a new flyer on your desk. I think the original supplemental information did not have, and this has a little green tag to it. So I don't know if you all had an opportunity to review that or not. With that, any questions of General Counsel?
So on this document, is this new or a supplement?
No, there's one page that did not make it into
That's the addition.
the packet, and that page, I think Sharon has a green tab?
Yeah, the green
Green
tab.
tab. That's the only page that's new. And that's not really a new page, it just didn't make it into the packet.
It has a few more comments and responses on it.
Yes, sir.
What's the kind of volume are we talking about on these types of complaints?
Mr. Jenkins, I'm not sure at this point. I know that with the federal government having published these guidelines that states are mandated to follow, and that having generated a certain amount of publicity, and then of course we have been talking to institutions for probably the better part of 5 months before we even went to publish the rules. We were talking to institutions, trying to get this process as smooth as possible. And I'm sure that those discussions may have generated further discussions on various campuses, at least with student government leaders. We've seen what we feel is an uptick in the complaints, but we're not sure to what to attribute it, and we anticipate a further increase as this process becomes better known. We will have, for example, the complaint form on our website and specific instructions and what a student must file with us in order to institute a complaint proceeding. It'll all be laid out on the website. Every school in the state is required per these rules to have a website dedicated to our student complaint procedure within 3 clicks of their opening web page. So we anticipate an increased volume. It's simply impossible for me at this point to quantify what that will be. I would imagine as we go forward, we're probably going to come back to you to tweak these rules in one way or another. I can't tell you what that's going to be right now either, but experience will be our guide in that.
And what group does the investigation actually?
At this point, within the agency,
In ours?
at this point, it would be the legal department, but with the ability to enlist the aid of every other department in the agency, depending on the type of complaint.
I think a type of complaint probably would dictate, but if I'm not mistaken, we're basically trying to be in compliance with the DOE's.
That is absolutely
Regulation.
correct. Until the department issued this mandate, not all that many states had a series of explicit rules such as this. And within the near future, all states will have to have these types of rules.
Yeah, I would speculate that we will see a lot more complaints as a result.
Well, and I guess I'm just wondering on the difference between an individual complaint and then the institutional integrity complaint that you're talking about. I mean, those are going to be a whole different types of profile and potential.
I would hope those are very, very few and
so.
far between.
Yeah.
But don't be surprised if it's on the books. You'll probably have to deal with it. Okay, if no more questions, may I have a motion for the adoption?
So moved.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
Thank you all very much.
Let's see. Agenda item 5A is discussion of the external audit report on the Federal Family Education Loan Programs. This item is reporting item only and does not require committee action. Director of Internal Audit, Mark Coley, will present this item. Mark, take it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members. Agenda item 5A, we'd like to brief the committee on external audit activities that have occurred since our previous meeting. And so we had one report that has been issued since July, and it was the FFEL program that was reviewed by the Federal Department of Education, and they actually conducted a joint review along with the Texas Guaranteed Student Loan Corporation. So the report that's in your packet of materials indicates that it's a no findings assessment by the federal auditors, which is a very positive statement. We always like to see the no findings report. The Texas Guaranteed Student Loan Corporation, they worked together. The field work was conducted in June. TG is actually still, we're pending receipt of their report. So as soon as that information is provided and the agency receives it, I will brief the committee in the future on what those, the outcome of the TG work was. And with that, I'd be happy to address any questions that you may have.
Any questions of Mark? If not, we'll move on to agenda item 5B, is an update on internal audit reports. Mark, you want to take that?
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. The agenda item 5B is an update on internal audit reports. I'd like to take you back to the previous meeting in July. At that time, I introduced a reporting classification concept whereby we could classify reports as either being Category 3, which is a significant risk, Category 2, which I would characterize as moderate risk, and then Category 1, which would be like the report that we just discussed, that was the external report, being a no findings type of report. So for the current period, audit reports that have been issued since the July AOC meeting, there were 4 follow-up audit reports that have been issued, and I'm pleased to report that they are all Category 1, no findings reports. 2 of those reports were internally focused reports, Teach for Texas Loan Repayment Program and the TEOG Program Administration here within the agency. 2 of the reports were actually externally focused. One was for Prairie View A&M University, a financial aid program, and the other was Texas Women's University, and that involved enrollment information accuracy. And so all of those previous issues that had been contained in the original audit report have been addressed, and so they're a Category 1, and we can close those out.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. The next item, and I would ask if we could get the actual document passed to you, is regarding a complaint that we've concluded our investigation on, and I'll wait just a moment while you get the document. What you've been just been passed is the results of our look into a complaint that was received within the agency. The complaint involved the Texas Success Initiatives Project. A little background on that project: in April 2012, the current year, the board approved a no-cost contract with the College Board regarding the Texas Success Initiatives area. And the complaint that was received actually had several aspects to it regarding an alleged improper benefit received by the commissioner. There were also some procurement aspects to the complaint regarding the actual solicitation process that was used for the Texas Success Initiatives endeavor, and an allegation that an individual that had been involved in that solicitation process had raised questions about the process and had been dismissed as a result of having raised those questions. And then finally, another related aspect was a suggestion that the Office of General Counsel had improperly participated in the solicitation-related activities or had exerted some type of undue influence as it related to these activities. So the overall conclusion of the investigation was that we were unable to substantiate those claims. There was one side issue that came up as a result of my investigation, and that related to, on the human resources front, there was some performance evaluation information that I looked at that really indicated that that's an area that I think the agency really needs to take another look at and come up with a means of assuring itself that performance evaluations for all staff are as meaningful as possible and are appropriately reviewed before being finalized, just to ensure that it's an accurate and valid assessment of the employee's performance. With that, I would be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mark. We will not be entertaining any questions on this particular one, since it involves a personnel matter. If need to, we will go in executive session.
Could I, just in general, I did have a question on the when you're reviewing the personnel records. I mean, how many did you review? Review performance.
Mr.
reviews?
Jenkins, if it's okay,
Okay.
rather we wait till on this one. And I think it's something that if we need to, we'll punt it to the full board and let Chairman Handleton deal with it. Is that all right, sir? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And we'll want to move on for now to item. Let me ask you, would anybody like to go on executive session on this? We can do that at the end of the meeting. Last item.
Sure.
Okay. All right, then right for now, we're going to move on to item 5C. Mark.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 5C is the annual report of audit activities for fiscal year 2012. This is a report that's statutorily required We work under the really the prescription of the Texas State Auditor's Office. They define actually the structure of the report, and then we plug in the content of the report. It's an informational item. The report is actually due into the State Auditor's Office by November the 1st of this year. A couple things that I'd point out about the report, and I'll be happy to entertain any questions at that point. The report is really a recap of items that the board or that this committee has seen over some period of time in the past. Perhaps committee composition has changed over time, but certainly the structure and the content of the report, including such things as our internal audit reports that were issued, the approved audit plan, the prior peer review report for the internal audit function. All of those things are items that have previously been submitted to the committee, and in the case of the annual audit report, previously approved by the committee. So I will be happy to entertain any questions that you have. We're simply structuring this report and preparing to submit it in accordance with statute.
Thank you. Any questions of Mark? Okay, let's move on to item 5D.
Thank you. Item 5D is the update on internal audit activities. Once again, this is a informational item, no action required. This is a status briefing, essentially, of the current activity of the department's work. We work off of the annual audit plan that the committee approved in July, and so I've broken the status report into 3 different categories for your information. The first category is the audit category. So in that category, we have actually 4 projects that are active right now. The information security assessment is underway, the ethics assessment is underway, and then there are 2 additional projects that are not listed, that didn't make the cutoff for this committee meeting, but we've actually begun work on a formula funding audit and a financial aid audit. Those last 2 are of interest because they will actually tie into some information that Dr. Alonso will be briefing you on here in a few moments about our new compliance activity within the agency. And then the Jarvis Christian College follow-up, that's actually a project that is run off from the previous fiscal year, completion of our follow-up reports that we were focused on to complete FY 2012. The investigations category, we receive investigations. We work with Mr. Franz as far as interacting with his area and their responsibilities. We also regularly dialogue with the Texas State Auditor's Office and their investigative function. And so what I've listed are projects that are currently either active or that were able to be dismissed. We currently have a project that's active where we're working with Texas A&M System and their internal audit function, more specifically their investigative function, for some allegations at Texas A&M Commerce. These allegations are really pertaining to international travel and some allegations of misspent funds in that area. And the next area was the next project was Texas State Technical College, Marshall. We received an allegation of misuse of Perkins funding at that institution. Again, we worked with TSTC's internal auditor, and that project we were able to summarily dismiss. They were able to gather some information pretty quickly, and we were able to close that project out quickly. I didn't list because it didn't make it in time for the cutoff for these materials, but some of you have already received from us. We just recently in October received a complaint regarding the Dallas County Community College District and their El Centro College. This was a complaint regarding pay for work not performed, and for that particular issue, we conducted some analysis within the agency. We also worked with the Dallas County internal auditor, and so we were able to pretty quickly work through that allegation and determine that it was without basis. And so there was an initial report provided back to some members of the board and to the Texas State Auditor's Office. That actual complaint report, just like the one that you were handed out for the other matter, that will actually be provided in your materials for the January meeting so that we can address any additional questions that you may have at that time. The last category is just some other items that we're working on. Several of them will be coming to you in the January when the committee convenes in January. We're working on tightening up the investigations protocol policy. There's actually a draft of that document that we've been vetting. I'm working closely with our general counsel. This area really ties in with some of the duties and responsibilities and the policy that's associated with the Commission's ethics officer. So the policies need to be able to come together and be well written and coordinated. And so our plan is to have a policy to present to the AOC at the January meeting. And then there are two things that are related that we will be bringing to the committee in January as well. The internal audit charter is a document that is becoming somewhat dated, and the charter really needs to be refreshed almost annually by requirement of auditing standards. And so it's been a couple of years since that document has been looked at, and actually the last item, the peer review that we need to get scheduled for the current year, the peer review will look at the charter, and so it's very timely to get that document updated. And regarding the peer review, I have gathered some information regarding possible providers of that service that I will be compiling and presenting for your consideration in January so that we can get it scheduled and conducted sometime this fiscal year. So that's a quick run through of our work that's currently in process, and I'll be happy to expand on any of those or answer any questions that you may have.
Good report. Any questions of Mark? No, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And you have one more item. Item 6A. No, I'm sorry. Is that?
It's actually both of us. So.
That's right. Stay on where you are. Item number 6A is an update on compliance activities. This item is a reporting item only and does not require committee action either. Dr. Alonso, will you take the lead on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a quick couple of points on the as background information. At the July AOC meeting, you heard a report from Mark on how we were going to respond to the Sunsets Review recommendation on setting up a compliance and monitoring function within the agency. At that time, Mark had presented a report based on his research and a recommendation to the commissioner that we would set up a compliance and monitoring function within the audit function, within the audit office. In other words, that office would be renamed Audit and Compliance instead of Internal Audit, and to incorporate compliance. And the commissioner thought that was a good idea. It had a lot of good points. It leveraged a lot of the resources that presently exist in the audit office, and good practices and so forth. However, we in talking to Sunset Review, they felt that there may be some problems associated, particularly conflict of interest and so forth, having it in the audit office. So we went back to the commissioner and provided several alternatives to establishing this office. or this department. I don't know what we call it yet, but this initiative. And the commissioner chose me. I don't know how I got so lucky, but the commissioner said that you would do it. So we are proceeding with that in mind. The office will report to me, directly to me. I will, of course, be working very closely with Mark in setting it up and getting it started and establishing it, writing the guidelines and so forth and so on. But then it will report directly to me. I don't have an audit background, don't pretend to, but I do have extensive experience in monitoring, especially in the area of subrecipient monitoring when it comes to federal funds, and so I think that I can run with it, and I will give it my best. So I am pleased to report that we are moving out on the compliance and monitoring function. Again, as a matter of background, this came out of the sunset, but the commissioner felt that we shouldn't wait for the sunset bill to pass and for the next year, for another year to go by before we implemented this. So he tasked the Associate Commissioner Linda Battle and myself to come up with both FTE, 2 FTEs at least, and the money to go with that to establish it in the current year, FY13. Because it's such a highly visible and something that we really should be doing and not wait now that the matter has been called to our attention. So this month, early in the month, we were fortunate to hire 2 highly qualified staff, 2 individuals that begin work with us on October 9th this month. David and Melissa, who are sitting here, come from an audit and compliance background, quite extensive, if I may add, both in state government and other entities, and they have significant experience in doing what we want them to do. I'm pleased to report that they have hit the ground running. They're getting oriented to the coordinating board, learning about the projects, learning about what they are going to be monitoring and issuing their compliance reports on, and so we're off and running. One of the things that I have tasked them to do is to come up with a comprehensive inventory of any compliance monitoring activities that we are presently conducting in the agency. And then this inventory will serve as a basis for us prioritizing our work and to identify any gaps that exist so that we know where we need to concentrate our efforts. I have also asked both David and Melissa to come up with a risk analysis, because, as you can see, our resources are limited. We have over 50 community colleges, 37 four-year schools, several HRIs, and so for us to think that we can hit all of them with 2 staff is totally unrealistic, of course, and so the best way that I have identified of doing that is to come up with a risk analysis and find out where the risks are so that we can concentrate our limited resources on those areas that we need to do that. So again, they are working with Mark and with his staff on coming up with this. I will be, like I said previously, taking over as soon as we got it set up and going, get it running. One of the things that Mark has sort of touched on this is in his 2013 audit plan, the one that this board approved back in July, I believe it was, or was it April? I guess it was in July. Mark had included in that audit plan to provide, I believe it was 4 audits. Is that right? What we call external audits?
It's a total of 6.
A total of 6 audits.
Yes.
That would, where he and his staff would actually go out to the schools and take a look at how they're handling financial aid and how they're handling the reporting of the enrollment data that ultimately results in the formula funding, which is what we are going to be looking at. So in visiting with Mark, what we have decided is that he will still conduct 2 of those audits, 1 in each area, 1 in financial aid and 1 in the enrollment reporting from the institutions. And we will use those 2 audits to integrate the 2 compliance staff to take them out, use it as a training ground, use it as a training method for them to get familiar with what we look at, what we do, who we talk to, get familiar with institutions and so forth. And then the other 4 audits will be redirected to, or the time and effort budgeted for those other 4 audits will be redirected to doing something within the agency. And I suppose, Mark, you will be amending your audit plan and bringing that adjusted audit plan to a subsequent AOC meeting.
That's correct.
For approval. So we think that is a good way to transition over to the compliance effort, and to have them assume all remaining compliance work, and thereby allow the internal auditors to concentrate on auditing the operations here within the agency. Mark, did I leave anything out? That's a brief overview of where we are. We are obviously taking this responsibility very seriously, as we take all responsibilities. We hope that when they come back and report to the agency or to the AOC, that it would be the type of reports that Mark provided today, which are no findings, but we can't say that yet. We will report whatever we find. So you will be seeing David and Melissa before you as we go forth. Mark, if you would like to add anything, or have either David or Melissa add anything, I'd be glad to.
Thank you. I would just like to welcome them as well. I think it's a great addition to our control environment here at the coordinating board. And going forward, I think, even though the functions will report separately, there's a very natural kind of interaction between audit and compliance. And so Dr. Alonso and I will continue to be sharing ideas and information, and the staff between audit and compliance, I think, we'll share risk assessment information, we'll share results, and certainly we still have the ability on the audit side to be able to go out to these institutions and conduct audit work if needed. If something shows up within the compliance monitoring visit that requires further investigation or an extensive look into, then we'd be poised to be able to perform that from the audit side.
Well, David and Melissa, welcome. Welcome to the agency. Dr. Alonso, just for clarity purpose, the compliance function will be totally focused on external. There won't be any internal compliance that they will be reporting to you in terms of their functions. That will be strictly internal auditors' functions. Am I correct?
Well, primarily that's what it's going to be. And if I misspeak here, please correct me. At the beginning, there will have to be some looking at how we collect that data, how we collect the reports, and so forth. But yes, you're right. Well, it will be focused externally.
Yeah, let me make sure. I'm sure you're working things. You can work it out. I'm not concerned about that. I want to make sure that the integrity of internal auditor is preserved and its independence from you or commissioner or from anybody else.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's make sure we're on the same page on that.
And in fact, Mr. Chairman, I anticipate that after a year or two of doing the compliance work that David and Melissa, and hopefully if the legislature agrees with the sunset recommendation and maybe fund the other 2 that they recommended a total of 4, if you recall. Once we get that going and we start those efforts, I suppose that Mark will be auditing me and my compliance staff on what kind of work we're doing. And yes, it will preserve the integrity of the internal audit. The only other thing, Mr. Chairman, that I may comment on, because I think it's quite remarkable, is that once David and Melissa got here, we announced that they would be working for me, and they still came to work for the coordinating board. So I think that is very remarkable, David and Melissa.
Thank you, Dr. Alonso. At this time, Mr. Jenkins, if it's okay with you, I really would like to wait till tomorrow lunch. Is that okay? All right. Well, then it concludes the Agency Operation Committee's meeting today. Unless any other comments, if not, I need a motion for the adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Well done, could be a modern day